Howdy, everybody. It's like a big group of people. How you doing? So a little about me, just real quick before we get started as I knock things off the stage. That's pretty excellent. All right. I'm actually from Michigan. For those that didn't know, I actually grew up in Redford, Michigan, about 4 blocks away from Detroit, and then moved to Ann Arbor. Spent a lot of time at U of M, for those that support, the Wolverines, and for those of you that don't hate me. But, so I'm happy to be back. I'm actually really excited about the fact that there's a conference in Michigan that we can come to and actually talk. It's pretty exciting for me. I've flown around and done a lot of talks in other places, but having worked here and having struggled to get money to fly out of state to conferences for certain things, I think something that's local is pretty excellent. So hopefully you're all here to learn about the human mind, because I love the human mind. I actually love all your minds. They're all very fascinating to me. Spent my entire life dedicating myself to understanding why you do things, and then secondarily, how I can get you to do those things again. So this presentation is really about why you do the things that you have no idea why you do them. And that being said, is the foundations of social engineering. It's basically a predication off of social environment. We are social creatures. Like any other ape, like any other social construction of any other biological entity, we as a group function under certain pressures and dynamics. And those pressures and dynamics evolve over time, but have core relationships to those things we need to survive. And some of it has to do with how society has taught us to survive. And this particular image, by the way, is one of my favorite images in the world. And I'll tell you why. Some of you are looking at this image thinking, that guy's losing his pieces, right? That's probably your first thought. Some of you are thinking, wow, maybe he's getting his pieces back. A social engineer, on the other hand, looks at that image and goes, ooh, I can move the pieces. And that's exciting. I like moving pieces. So in a culture today, we have built a culture off of providing value and services. We are a service-driven culture. You do not buy things. You buy them with expectations of them doing something for you or a service. And as we move to the cloud and as we move to more service-based subscriptions, you're even seeing traditional commodity-based understandings like video games or other services start to become subscription. Join my service plan, any video game you want. We're all service-driven. And what happens when you're service-driven? You really care that the people that you're working with get the services that they've paid for. And you drive into those people who are your front contact people that they should, under no circumstances, upset the customer. Because the customer might take his business to an alternate service, and then we would be losing revenue. So the first stage of this game is absolutely everybody in this room is wired to help. You're all wired to help. It goes long beyond this. But society as a whole has wired you even more deeply to help. And that wiredness, that need to help, that desire to provide value and services makes my life really easy. So, what does a social engineer do? Now, there was an earlier social engineering talk which I sat in briefly, which was actually quite good. If none of you caught it, you might want to catch up with him. But a social engineer is essentially a 3-part game, right? First is recon. I learn everything I can about whatever my target is. I learn their lingo. I learn how they talk. I learn how they think. I learn what they care about. And that's the most important part. Because once you know what somebody cares about, you can play with what they care about. Their value systems are by far the most easily influenced things in the world. And if you ever wonder about that, I ask you to just discuss religion with strangers, right? Because religion is a value system. That's all it is, right? It's a very complicated value system with rules and with rituals around it, and I'm not saying it's neither real or fake or anything like that. It doesn't matter to me. What I am saying is that if you want to go have a conversation with somebody who's got a value system based off a specific religious bent and then disagree with them, you will see how actively people will defend their social mechanisms. I will tell you that LinkedIn is the worst thing that any company could ever do. I mean, LinkedIn is great for me, but it really sucks for all of you. I used to spend time dumpster diving, and I don't know how many people have ever dumpster dived. Anybody actually ever done dumpster diving? Awesome. Oh my God, that's way more hands than I ever get, right? Anybody who's ever dumpster dived knows 2 things. One, there's way too much paper in the world. We should really, really save the trees. And 2, coffee grinds suck. They just suck. They get into everything. They stain everything. They make everything smell like coffee. They're horrible. Rather have banana peels. Rather have rotten apples. Rotten meat is better than freaking, anyway. I'll get off of that now. But so LinkedIn has solved this problem for me, right? Now I just go onto LinkedIn and I type eBay. What do you want to bet? Like 100 people show up that work for eBay. Not only does it show up where they work, it shows me what they do. And not only it shows me what to do, it shows me what they did do in the past. It shows me what they care about. It shows me what skills they have. It shows me how they relate to their business. It shows me who else relates to them within their business. It builds this entire social framework map of your company. It takes me, on average, when I'm doing a target scaping on LinkedIn, it takes me roughly 15 minutes before I have all the information I need to start cold calling in and getting better information than I can get off of LinkedIn. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't do that. I usually spend a lot longer doing my research, but that's just how easy it was. This used to take me days. I mean, this used to take physical penetrations into the environment to get into the dumpster just so that I could get stuff, or paying off the guy who does the garbage, or whatever have you, so that I could get access to the trash. Now I don't even have to do that anymore, man. It takes like, it's just ridiculous. So if you're on LinkedIn and you like to prescribe yourself about how great you are and how great you're doing for your company and all these wonderful other things, you're beaconing yourself to be a target. Like, just beaconing, right? You know, getting access to an employee used to be a really hard thing to do. It used to be difficult. You used to have really complicated pretexts. You used to have some reason for calling. You had to have some relationship that the person would want to engage you on. Not so much anymore. You don't need that anymore. The service-driven culture has defined a way that I can call you up and say, I don't even know what I'm doing, and someone will spend half an hour on the phone trying to figure out what I want so that they can help me. Like, literally, you can call a help desk up and be like, yeah, I'm not even sure what your company does, but I'm having a problem. And they will actually sit down and explain to you what their company does, and then explain to you how they can help. It's fantastic. I love these people. Social engineers in specific, there are multiple types of social engineers, and if you're wondering what type I am a con artist. Okay? I do the long cons. I'm not the short con game. I'm not the guy that writes the email that gets you to click on something, although I can. This is just not what I do. What I do is convince you to give me money, or convince you to give me resources, or convince you to do other things that you probably shouldn't do. Why I do that is a completely different reason, but it's just my style. So getting access to people is always the goal of my type of social engineering. People are my key. Some people don't want to interact with you at all. They just want to send emails to you and have you interact with technology and have the technology do all the work for them. And that's predominantly what you see today, because it's very low risk. For harder targets, for pharmaceutical companies, for banks, for people who have regimented segmentations of controls and who have a very clear understanding of how much their intellectual property is worth, and then go through the processes of protecting it, that's where people like me come in. We're the ones that actually physically penetrate the organization and deposit things like keys inside of the USB keys inside of the organization, or befriend the secretary, or send flowers to somebody that has a bug mic in it, whatever. Just we do these things. That's what we do. Corporate espionage is the name of the game. So preloading and pretexting, right? So these are two techniques that we use that are very fancy names for lying, more or less. I don't know why we don't call it lying, because apparently we feel bad when we're sitting in the boardroom saying, no, I lied to you. Instead, we say, I pretext you. This got very popular, pretexting, very popular in the HP scandal. If anybody remembers the HP scandal with Meg Whitman, and the private investigators were using pretexting to get additional information on how investments were going. We get a huge deal, because it's technically not illegal. So just so you're aware, I can call you and tell you I'm the doctor of so-and-so, and I can do all these wonderful things, and it's not illegal until I cross a certain threshold. And that threshold is authoritative, right? So if I say I'm a doctor and I give you medical advice, oh, I'm screwed, right? Because I'm not a doctor and I'm impersonating a physician, that's screwed. But if I tell you I'm a doctor and I don't give you any medical advice, and I talk about something else, it's perfectly okay, it's not illegal. So the first step is find out how they talk. I can't stress that enough, right? In order to blend in with a target, you need to know how they talk, right? And you can't just call up, I don't know, a surf shop, because I'm from California now, and call up and say, yes, I'd like to see the numbers on the financial fiscal quarter of 2012 in January and February, because I believe we have a discrepancy in our tax audit. That doesn't work. I'm going to get a whole lot of what? And then I'm going to get shoved to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, and I'm going to feel like an idiot. Some guy who's like a CBA is going to get on the phone and be like, what are you talking about? I have no idea, because I'm not a CBA. I can't do that. So we learn to talk like you. We learn to walk like you. Then we make contact with you. And as I've said before, with LinkedIn, trivial. I do it all the time, right? And once we've decided what our attack vector is, which is the most likely thing we're going to do to get to you, then we just execute on it. It's fairly simple. So recon. What does recon mean? So in the last social engineering talk, he touched upon a tool called Maltego. Some people knew what it was, and some people didn't. Maltego is what's known as an open source information collection system, right? So open source or open information collection system, sorry. And what that means is mining public places for data about you or your company or whatever it is that I happen to be targeting at this particular point. I like partners specifically. They're my favorite venue to attack because customers you can shove off because one customer isn't a big deal, but a strategic partner, pissing them off could cost you billions of dollars. Just in case you were wondering, like the last capture the flag at DEF CON, I don't know if anybody actually read that up by a guy who goes on Twitter by Tactical Intel. He and I were discussing it. His pretext was a Canadian Walmart, and he said that he was with the UN, and they were doing a disaster preparedness drill about an epidemic, and he wanted to know, what their capacity was to deal with that, and so that he could, help them win the contract. Yes, partners, right? Billions of dollars in revenue, awesome. Anyway, so yeah, I use LinkedIn, I'll follow connections, individuals, I'll look at company relationships, I'll look at Twitter, I'll look at who Twitter is, by the way, fantastic, because it allows the company to interact with users. This allows me to track how they talk to their customers, which allows me to replicate their customers better. It even allows me to replicate their partners better because I now know what partners, what customers we have in common, sort of the Venn diagram of relationships. And then I exploit it. And you see there I talk about relationships. I'm not a big fan of reading my slides out loud, so feel free to read them as I talk, because I'm not going to speak to them directly, because that's why you guys have eyes and know how to read. We'll log into all these different various sites. You can name them all. I named some of them there. We try to find people. If I find you on LinkedIn, rest assured I'm going to find you on Facebook and Twitter. These are just givens, right? And then once I find you on Facebook and Twitter, I'm going to start monitoring your hobbies. And once I find your hobbies, I'm going to start looking for hobby sites that you interact with. And I'm going to start looking at the way that your handles that you use in those different interactions so that I can tell how you separate your business from your personal life, which is becoming closer and closer, converged, which I will go into a little bit later. So who's using it is always a question that I get. Like, well, who's using social engineering and how should I worry about them and who cares and blah, blah, blah. And so this is sort of my default list of social engineering, right? The good, people like me, people like me, people like you, salesmen, obviously. If you don't think salesmen use social engineering, that's pretty sad. Marketing people are actually better than us at it. They've had way more time researching how people do things. And then finally, the big one is organized crime. And that's probably the one that most of us care about in here today, is that organized crime uses malware like it was a commodity chip, right? You can almost invest in it at this point. Literally, there's almost like a market where you can be like, well, I believe that this particular malware company, malware as a service company, is going to do better business than that malware services company because of the way that they're going to market. Like, it's that bad. You can literally get that kind of information out there on those things. The bads, right? The bads are the phishers, the scammers, and the 411s. And how do you know they're bad? Because you can talk to just about anybody, and they will know what they are. Right? If you go up to your mother and you say something about a 411 scammer in Nigeria and she goes, oh yeah, Prince so-and-so, they're bad, right? They're mainstream knowledge, they're no longer good at it. The phishers tend to be moderately good at it. You might get that AT&T email that says you have an invoice overdue. To me, that's still in that sort of basic phrase. It doesn't have my name in it. It doesn't have any relationship to me. It's sort of a generic blast that says, do you have an AT&T account? I hope so. And if you do have one, have you checked it lately? I hope so. And if you haven't checked it lately, will you please click on this link? Right? That's sort of the pretexting that goes with that. I'm much more along the lines of more specific. And the ugly, right? We have the script kiddies, unorganized mafia, and school kids. And unorganized mafia is, places out of Brazil currently. Like, the best malware being written right now is coming out of Brazil. Don't ask me why. I don't know, but they're just making awesome malware. But they couldn't serve you malware as a business to save their life. Like, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the sophistication yet. That's still coming out of the Russian and the organized crime, the Russians, out of Chechnya, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody know what this is? Anybody? No? Nobody? Anybody familiar with the phrase phrenology? Aha! A couple people. Phrenology is the early 18th century concept that your brain size and the way that it worked and the bumps that you had on it actually determined what kind of person you were. It was very, very prominent in Jack the Ripper case. So you're wondering. They did a lot of forensics evidence, or phrenology evidence in Jack the Ripper case looking for that guy who was going to be a deviant. They used to take like measures of your head. But the reason that I have it up here is that this actually comes from a very famous book, Gray's Anatomy. Not the show, But before it was a show, it was a book. And it was known to be the best medical text in the world at its time because of one very specific thing: very, very good illustrations. That's what made it different than every other book. So this is actually in one of their copies. And what I like about this is it shows you something very specific, right? So you see things like combativeness over here. You see things like language and form and calculations and history and strategy over here. Does anybody happen to know how they figured this out? What do you think? He's absolutely right. What he said was brain injuries. This is a map of crap, somebody got their head crapped in, and they have a brain injury, and now they can't do X. So it must be that part of the skull that does X. That's what we've learned. That's what this is. Compared to what we know today, this is the equivalent of what I would say is voodoo. What we know today about the brain and how well we can image the brain and how much I know about how your brains works should terrify absolutely everyone in this room. It really should. Because fMRIs have allowed us to watch the brain do things to the point now where we actually have the ability to have a computer read your brain patterns and pick a picture out of it and say, this is what you were thinking about. Scary. So social engineerings do all these tricks. Right? We have all these little mechanisms that have fancy names that we use in order to get you to do things. They all break around a certain set of ideals. But we have things like referential association. And everybody in here knows the referential association model. Absolutely everybody's exposed to it. In fact, you've been desensitized to it at this point, but it still sort of works. And for referential association, I only have to clue you into the Fiat commercial for the super sporty Fiat 500 that they built. You know, if you've seen that commercial, it essentially involves a not stereotypically handsome man and an extraordinarily attractive woman, and she really likes him a lot because that car is really fancy. Which implies that if I had the fancy car, very attractive women would find me very attractive, and then, so I should buy the car to have very attractive women come hit on me. We all know the reality of that. But that's just what they do, right? And it actually works in the reverse. Most people don't know this, but let's say you're not attracted to women because you're more attracted to the male role in that. What it says to you is that if you yourself go after the guy with that car, you will be that attractive. That's what it says in a referential model. All very convoluted. We use referential association in social engineering specifically in this one, this last line right here. The California State Taxation Board doesn't exist. Made it up. Sounds like it exists. Doesn't. But if I was giving a conversation with you and you had no reason to doubt me and I used that phrase, it wouldn't trigger anything in your mind. You would just go, okay, California State Taxation Board, okay. Maybe this is serious. Anyway. Sensationalism, I think we're all probably perfectly, excuse me, I can't talk. Okay. Sensationalism, I think we're all probably pretty aware of, right? Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Steve Jobs died. This is his last dying words. Here's a picture of Britney Spears, you know, with her head shaved off, standing upside down in a water tank. It doesn't matter, right? But sensationalism is an artifact that says society has picked up on something, and if you don't know what it is, society will then ostracize you for being different. And if we all remember the playground when we were in grade school, we should all start realizing exactly what that feels like. It's much more subtle now. It's much deeper into our brains. We don't think of it in those very black and white terms anymore, but that's essentially what sensationalism does. It says, everybody in the world is watching Friends. You're not. You're weird. You can't participate in our conversations. You can't hang out with us. You're not. You didn't read Harry Potter. You don't even know what a snitch is. Why would we even talk to you, right? These are the things that sensationalist does. And then scarcity. I don't know, man. Scarcity is a weird one. It works if it works well because you have to have really defined scarcity models in order to have it work. But it really sort of fails on all other models. But scarcity, like, I don't know, you realize this. We're about to reach a bacon shortage. I don't know if anybody realizes this or not, right? But it's actually true. I'm not making that up. Like, there is a critical bacon shortage coming. And it's because the corn drought has gone so badly, we can't feed the pigs to get enough pigs to make bacon, right? So the scarcity of bacon is going to cause the cost of bacon to go skyrocketing, right? That's what scarcity does. But if it's not real, if it's inflated scarcity, it tends to fall apart on you. Acting. All social engineers essentially are actors in one way, shape, or form. We're just playing a role. Now, all of us in the world are actors. The people you are at home are not the people you are in society, because society has a set of rules, and when you violate those set of rules, there are consequences. I'm fairly sure that all of us at times have wanted to execute something that we wanted to do very, very badly in a situation, but restrained ourselves because there are police. Right? That's what police are. They're the social cops, right? Like, no, we as a society do not tolerate the fact that you jumped up and beat the crap out of this guy. That's not acceptable. You can't do that. Well, you can, you just have to pay for it later. In some cases, that might be worth it to some people. Normally in here, I do some sort of like real acting thing, but If you don't think I'm standing up here acting now, then I'm better than you think I am. So we won't go over that. Question overloading. Question overloading is very popular in a very specific set of people. Psychics. Question overloading is almost exclusively used by psychics. And if you're wondering, yes, I used to wander around and convince people to give me money because I was psychic. And they did, almost all the time. I am not psychic. I made it all up. But that being said, question overloading. How many people have seen John Edwards, who's like an expert at question overloading, right? Okay. I'm not going to ask you whether or not you believe in John Edwards, because that's not what this talk is about, but I will tell you that John Edwards is the best question overloader I have ever seen. He does this. It's a very good example. I'm getting something. It begins with a J. It begins with a J. It might be a J-A. It might be a J-E. I'm not really sure what that is. You know, has anybody had a relationship with a J? It might be a male name. It might be a female. It might be a female. It might be J. No, I don't think it's Jane. I think it's a male. That is a question overloading. All I'm doing is sending questions out into your audience so that at one point, if something registers, you make an action. You'll notice that I was scanning the crowd the entire time. That's just habit. Thank you for that. And once you do something, then we lock into you and we start cold reading our way past or warm reading or whatever it is that we do. So question overloading is awesome. And question overloading in a more specific example, rather than being psychic, question overloading to use it towards getting something out of someone, as Kevin Mitnick's first book made popular, is something along the lines of, hey, how's it going? Yeah, I really need you to look up my account number because I don't remember it. You know, my account number, yeah, I used to remember it. I think, what day is it? Oh, I'm sorry, I had something to do at 3 o'clock. So can you tell me what my account number is? No, yeah, you need something for my account number. Why did you need that? I'm sorry, why did you need that for my account number? I gave you my name. And you see that question overloading, that dynamic, it's just a way to overload your senses, keep your critical mind from being able to access questions, and keep you responding to me, not me responding to you. Because the minute I'm responding to you, I've lost. That's the way this game works. Now, experts, and by experts, I do mean experts, use the confusion technique. Now, I will explain something to you that probably none of you have ever known before this talk. There is only one mental state, one. There's just one mental state that is so abhorrent to your brain, it will do whatever it can to relieve that state. And I bet the vast majority of you right now are thinking, it's fear. And the other half are going, it's confusion. I know, because that's the topic you're talking on. But fear isn't it. You can be scared for hours, right? I mean, people can be, you go to the movies to be scared. The scared isn't it, it's confusion. You confuse somebody, and they will do whatever they can to be unconfused. Unconfused is the worst state you could ever be in, ever. Which is why people who have mental problems are often considered confused. You're confused. You're confusing reality with dream. You're confused. You're confused. That's the confusion. It's very hard to pull off confusion. It creates quite a bit of work. You have to be really, really good. It backfires probably 98% of the time, even from somebody who's an expert at it. But when it does work, it's like bulletproof. You don't have to do anything else from that point. Once you've got them confused, you supply them with the answer that solves the confusion, and they are your best friend because you have saved their sanity. It's that simple, you know. And I think everybody in here can probably think of a time where they were confused by something, and somebody said something that sounded reasonable, and then 5 minutes later you walked away and went, no, that doesn't work. That's not right. That's what the confusion trick does. It just makes you leap at whatever I can for about 5 seconds so that I can get whatever I want done. I think this one is old hat. I think, you know, everybody knows what claiming authority does, right? Everybody knows the power of the clipboard, I'm sure, by now, right? I mean, in the 1980s, having a clipboard was a novel. By the 1990s, having a clipboard was suspicious. And by the 2000s, having a clipboard is just annoying, right? You see people with clipboards, and you go, oh, man, he's got a clipboard. Now he's going to like, want to check things and do stuff. I thought I was getting out of here early. Oh. But But claiming of authority for people like me do it slightly differently. We no longer need the clipboard. We never needed the clipboard. The clipboard was just a prop. What we do is claim authority through statements, right? So I have a couple statements up there. My favorite one actually is, look, has anyone else taken CPR classes? No? This is what we do, right? Did you hear I said that? Very authoritarian, very straight. Did anybody doubt me? No reason to doubt me, right? Until I give you a reason, right? I know CPR. The first thing we should do is a tracheotomy. What? Huh? Right? That causes you to pause. Yeah, okay, but you know. Has anybody else taken CPR? What we need to do is raise his head and clear his mouth so he can breathe. I'll do that. That sounds reasonable. Never taken a CPR class in my life. I have no idea how to do it, right? Couldn't tell you. But it doesn't matter. I didn't say in here, I never said I took CPR classes. I didn't do it. I just said, have you? No? Well, then I'm more of authority than you are because you don't know. If you don't ask me if I know, I'm gold, right? Aggressive posturing. This is part of confusion. You use aggressive posturing usually to create confusion, but aggressive posturing is it's more along the lines of just causing somebody to feel more risk than they should at a given particular. And like most often, it's used by frontline people, right? Like you get help desk people. Aggressive posturing works for low-line people who are scared of losing their job, right? That's really where it works. You start getting to management level or director level, and then aggressive posturing does nothing but makes them irritated and piss them off and make them want to ask more questions about you. I think actually aggressive posturing was used in the CF. If you guys haven't read the social engineering capture the flag from last, it's actually really good. But he used aggressive posturing there by stating, I don't know, but I know it's worth billions of dollars. That's aggressive posturing, right? Like you personally are going to be responsible for this company losing billions of dollars. You, right? Not many of us would stand on the other side of that phone and go, well, no, I'm going to ask some more questions. This is the way it works. By the way, if you have questions at any time, just draw my attention and I will try to answer them. Pattern interrupts, my personal favorite. Pattern interrupts. Actually, I have a blog out on InfoSec Island that uses a pattern interrupt that went out today. Pattern interrupts are the ability to short-circuit your brain. If you want to think of them as a buffer overflow for the human brain, you can. That's sort of what they are. But if somebody's having a very intense conversation about something, I don't care what it is, and you suddenly go, have you seen the purple elephant? They are going to stop. Because it has nothing to do with anything, and they have to devote time into their into their process engine in order to figure out what the heck you're talking about and then supply context with it. You can see how this relates to confusion, right? Like, oh my God, polka-dotted elephant. What? What polka-dotted elephant, right? But that pattern interrupt is a way for us to stop you from going down a path we don't want you to go down. If you're starting to go down a path you're going to ask me questions that I can't answer, I might pattern interrupt you so that you derail your thought processes and then convert you to a path that's more beneficial to my process. Oftentimes, this is security guard stuff. You use this stuff for security guard stuff. That's actually a live example where I had penetrated into an organization and was sitting in their finance department and was copying off actual financial data in the middle of the day. Somebody came over and like, hey, you shouldn't be accessing that, because I stole somebody's credentials who didn't have access to whatever it was that I was mining. And that was my response to get by. What? Oh, hey, real quick, what color is 3? Like, you can't answer that question. It's just one of those things, right? But as long as I don't let you pause for it, as long as I don't let you think about what color is 3, as long as I keep going, you'll notice, I mean, it's yellow. You notice I answer it, right? I created confusion. What color is 3? I don't know. It's yellow. Oh, thank you for answering that for me, right? And as long as my flow is good, right, the way this actually works is, if I were to say it in the phrase that when I actually did was, what? Huh? No, I mean, oh wait, what? Real quick, man, what color is 3? Wait, no, it's yellow, never mind. What were you saying? And before he can say access log, I've said something else, right? Like, is this about the fact that I had to reset my password? Because, I just reset my password like 3 days ago. Now, if you're really wondering, I reset my password invalid access log. You can link those two things together. And for a brief moment in time, they will make sense. By then, I'm running for the door, hoping that no one will ask me what the hell I'm doing. Reciprocation principle, this is probably the strongest principle that we have. This is the one that most often everyone will fall for. It is built into our DNA, from our social DNA, not our biological DNA, for those that were wondering. And that is because this is long ago when we were living in caves, and there were 12 of us, and the world was scary, helping each other out was the only way to survive. Like the clan, the group, the tribe, whatever you want to call them, they needed to interact with each other in order to make themselves successful. This is so far into your social DNA that it is easily exploitable, and it is most commonly known as the free sample. That's the most unelegant illustration of such. But it's the same thing that says, hey, John, I noticed you like this sort of book, whatever it is, so I found one while I was on a trip. Here it is. Here's your book. Now, the next time you come up to John and say, hey, John, can you do me a favor? He says, well, you even thought about me enough to buy me this book, so of course I can do this favor for you. It's only fair. Now, that's not what he actually thinks, because it's way ingrained, but that's more or less what happens. Time splitting. Time splitting is awesome. Time splitting is most used by magicians, in case you were wondering. Time splitting is the fact that sound and light travel at different speeds, and the differences between your ability to process information and what actually happens are different. So by the time you hear my voice, I've already said it. And by the time you get it in your brain and process it and put things into it and understand that there were words coming out of my mouth, it's already happened. The further away you are from me, the longer this takes to happen. Now, you can use that to do pattern interrupts, you can use that to do confusion techniques, you can do that to cause differential perceptions based on certain things. Magicians use it a lot. I won't tell you how, though, because it's kind of their secrets. But I am a hypnotist, for those that did not know. Multiple certifications in hypnotism. And the classic hypnotism command, sleep, is a very good example of time splitting, right? Because sleep doesn't happen, like for those of you who know, I don't do sleep like sleep and then that doesn't work. There's like a whole bunch of factors that go into it, one of which is touching and one of which is jerking and feels with the inner ear and does a bunch of other stuff. But when I go and I pull your hand and your body jerks and your inner ear shifts and then I say sleep, I'm time splitting, right? Your body is receiving a physical sensation at a certain time, your auditory nerve is receiving a different set of signals at a different time, and your brain has to quickly choose which one it's going to pay attention to. I'm going to pay attention to the one that says I'm falling. Make sense? I would too. Sleep gets right by your conscious mind, it goes right into the subconscious, and the subconscious goes, sleep, I know how to do that, and you're out. Doesn't work on everybody, so don't worry. Rapport. This is the #1 skill of all social engineers. Rapport. The ability to make you like me. That's all that is. Some of you are thinking, well, I wouldn't like you. Just look at you up there. But I agree that if I wanted you to like me, I could probably get there eventually. This all goes back to a bunch of different techniques that we use, the most common of which is language matching, right? Which goes back to my pretexting and preloading. And making sure that I know how to speak your language and I know how to speak it in the way that you speak it. Some of it is, dress, right? And having a certain presentation. Breath synchronization is a good one, where you breathe at the same rate they do. That's taught in NLP for anybody who likes neural language programming. Breathing is actually the key to most biological synchronization, in case you're wondering. The other one is the heart. Breath and heart are the two. If you can synchronize either one of those two things, you end up in a very same biological rhythm. So actually, you can put EEGs on people and do that, and it's very cool. I did it as a scientist experiment when I was in 7th grade. That is flat. It's a flat piece of land, right? Love this picture. Flat piece of land. It's not flat to me either, by the way. I know it's flat, but it doesn't look flat to me. In fact, that particular girl up there really throws me off because it looks like she's standing on a decline, which is really not. It just drives my brain crazy. But the goal here is, this is how easy it is to drive your brain crazy, right? I'm standing up here and I'm now driving your brain crazy. Your brain does not understand this image. You're intellectualizing it. You're putting it across and you're saying, I understand that it's not really warped and blah, blah, blah. But if it's this easy from your visual arm, this is just your visual cortex, right? I'm just playing with your visual cortex and your space relationships. If it's this easy to do to your visual arm, imagine what I can do to the rest of your senses. For example, how many people in here, just take a guess. Just hold up your hand with some fingers about how many nervous systems you think you have. Anyone want to take a gander? You think you have 2? 3? You think you have 5? We got 1 over there, 5, 1. Okay, so for the most part, the guy with 3 had it. There's actually 3 discrete nervous systems in your body. 3. One of them is the conscious one we all know and love, and we interact with every day. The second one is your fight or flight mechanism. We used to think that somehow they were related. They're not. It's a completely separate nervous system. They both start at the stimuli and then completely branch off into different directions, and never shall they meet, ever. So if I can affect change in one, it will affect change in the other. Now the third one, they just discovered, and it's weird. It involves touch, and it has no purpose that we can figure out except to let you know that you're being touched by another human being. That's it. It's too slow to be a reactionary reflex survival instinct. It doesn't carry any additional messages about pain, discomfort, blah, 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 so it's obviously not designed around motor functions or any other conscious systems that we do. It's literally there to tell you somebody else who is also a human is touching you. That's it. That's all it does. Found that like a year ago. They were like, oh, look, we have just yet another nervous system. Awesome. So how does this all work? These are real-world examples that I did in my previous life when I was young and had more time. I was hired by a company to acquire their intellectual property. That's what they wanted me to do. Made a cute marketing profile of a woman. She was cute. I don't know where I found her picture. Google is awesome. Mined a connection, looked for somebody, made the connection, looked at Facebook to get the hobbies, found out that one of his friends had just changed jobs, who was no longer, that used to work at the company but doesn't anymore and is now working at a different company, and was on vacation. Forged an email from that guy, right, on vacation. They liked snowboarding, just in case you were wondering what their favorite topic was. So I sent them, you can see here the example of the language that I used, email forged, dude, check out my wife, totally carving a diamond. How many people in here think he didn't click on it? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah. So keylogger, IP acquired, 7 hours. And in particular, this particular person was targeted because I found him on a forum complaining about antivirus and how it was screwing up his build times. So I targeted him specifically because I knew that, because I didn't have a 0-day, right? I wasn't like gonna go buy a 0-day, right? I like took like off the shelf, like, you know, can download it from anywhere, bad malware, and slapped into this guy's system because he didn't have antivirus on it, and then stole his IP. It took me 7 hours. The key thing about this one is that I literally went into the conference room to get the rules of engagement for the gig, walked back in the same day and handed them a CD with their own intellectual property on it, right? That's the only time in my entire life I was a social engineering rock star, right? Where I was like, yeah, suck it, right? I totally wanted the like microphone so I could just be like, out. They were horrified. Needless to say, their developers now hate me, and I'm persona non grata because now they all run antivirus. This one is about a manufacturing company. Manufacturing companies are interesting because they have two sets of intellectual property, for those that didn't know. They have the intellectual property of their up-and-coming stuff, which is their ASICs designs, their dies, and all the things that they're getting ready to build. And then they have the intellectual property of the things that they're currently building, two separate things. So you can attack them differently. And in this case, they wanted me to acquire proprietary specifications for chip design. That's what they wanted. So I did a bunch of stuff. You can see that it's all using the same things I told you on the previous slides. There's nothing out of the ordinary that I'm doing here. You can see that LinkedIn is prominently displayed. You can see that I did my favorite thing in the world, which is find a partner. Right? You can see I even said Twitter. I can see them interacting with people. I told you how awesome that was for me, and you can see why. Right? So I monitored Twitter. And I said, okay, there's a partner event happening, and I need, you know, I need something for this event to take place. And if you know marketing people and you use the word event with marketing people, you will watch their eyes dilate and their hearts palpitate. Smacking my mic. Because these things that we are doing here right now make marketing people crazy. They spend the vast majority of their life trying to figure out how to make it go okay. So needless to say, I sent it to 3 people. I got some hits, one hit actually. So this particular person was a marketing person. They shouldn't have access to anything that I wanted, yet they did, right? Just through a misconfiguration, right? This person had access to a directory. At one point, I can likely guess that they were doing a marketing campaign, and they needed access to the development specs as part of the marketing campaign, and they just never closed the share. So, You know, they had no data classification, they had no tagging of their data, they had no idea where their data was hiding, you know, all the things that you scare yourself about DLP, right? All true, right? It took me 3 days to do that, mostly waiting around for somebody to click the stupid link. And strangely enough, that's it. I actually have a longer presentation, but I ran through this one kind of quick. So, what else can I tell you? That's completely unrelated to this. Since I have extra time to kill. And I have actually a lot of extra time to kill because we're eating after this, so really I'm just holding you up from dinner at 6:15. So first I'll start with any questions related to the material that I threw up there. Anyone? Questions? Question? I have both. So his question was, do you have a normal LinkedIn account or do you pay for premium access? I actually have both. But normally the normal one will just work. Because you're not looking, like the premium stuff is about mining for connections and getting access to either A, people who are doing hiring, right, because you're a premium subscriber looking for a job, or B, you're trying to mine for connections for sales relationships so that you can do cold calling or take relationships to sales. So the individual employee or the hierarchy behind the company, that's still all publicly available, right? And personally, like, I think we should all band together as a group and demand that LinkedIn somehow change its business practice so that I can't model your entire company, but hey, yes?
Isn't it true that perceived authority is more powerful than morality?
That depends. I mean, I would say in general, yes. In general. So his question was, is it true that perceived authority will trump morality? And the answer to that is usually, right? And it depends on the level of stressors that are involved. And for those that don't know what stressors are, wow, remind me to turn my phone off. Okay. Stressors are those things that cause you anxiety. That's what a stressor is. That's just the name for them. We call them stressors. If you're like standing outside a burning building and people are running around crazy, authority trumps morality every time, right? Because you're in a state where you're in a panic state. We've defined ourselves to trust persons in authority, specifically like a fireman or such and such. So you would defer to that even if your morality was different. But
isn't it true that perceived authority is going to trump morality?
not all the time, no.
It's a true or false question.
No, it isn't. I mean, the question is true or false, but the answer isn't binary.
Give an example when it is.
Fanatics.
And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because there's an old study that basically shows that perceived authority will trump morality.
I agree. I said, right, right.
So what I was trying to get at was that by interrupting, making a blanket statement, causes you to go on and start explaining, you take that authority back and forth.
Oh yeah, I mean, yes. Yes, I realize, yes, we're playing an authority game. Like, I realize that, right? Which is why I walked away from you. I didn't know if you caught that. I just walked away from you in a dismissal factor. It was like walking over here. But for those that weren't aware of what we were doing. But to give you an answer of why I disagree with some of that statement is fanatics. Fanatics' morality is imprinted into their psyche to the point where it is unbreakable, right? Think of the guy who has tons of guns and is sitting in his house and says, I will not pay income tax. Authority is not trumping morality there in any way, shape, or form, right? But yes, in a normal social situation, authority will always trump morality, unless, of course, there's something more severe in case, like, you know, shoot that guy. Well, that might not work. So, just give you some more background. Like, I have degrees in therapy, hypnotherapy, mentalism is this form of magicians, some magic stuff. All of these things I use on a regular basis to do social engineering type work. But yes?
How much hypnotherapy is pseudoscience? Like maybe subliminal messages?
To answer your question in the clinical definition, all of it. There is no clinical study that shows that hypnotherapy is any different than you thinking to yourself, I don't want to do this anymore. It all works under the basic preamble of two things. Well, mostly it's placebo, to be honest with you, right? Like, the placebo effect is well known, and everybody in here probably knows about it. It's ridiculously powerful. But what hypnotism does is it really just encourages you to do something that consciously you aren't able to do. So it's really, you have, I'll get to you in just a second. You have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, sort of. That's not really true. Actually, you have about 1,000 different centers in your mind that all pick and choose about whether or not they're going to do something. There was once a great quote by Whitman, I think it was, that I am multitudes, which is an actual correct statement. There are different sets, there's centers in your brain that fight with each other over whether or not you're going to do something. That's why you can have a war with yourself. I want to. No, I'm not going to. That's why you can do that. You couldn't do that if your brain wasn't competing with itself. So all hypnotism does is put you into a state where you are receptive to doing something. That's it. And if it's not something you want to do, you won't do it. But it allows you to get rid of all of those behaviors and manufacturers that you've built yourself and go straight to your underlying behaviors and say, you know what, let's stop eating chocolate every day, right? And then you go, okay, so I'll try not to eat chocolate every day. It's not really that extraordinary. Yes, sir. Great question. So he's asking, how do you protect yourself against social engineering from a corporate perspective, which was a question which was in the last social engineering talk. The first thing is that all social engineering fails at critical thought. The second that you start critical thinking, all social engineering fails, because we're building this fictional thing, whether it's fictional rapport, whether it's a fictional urgency, whether it's a fictional fear, you're going to lose your job, right? It's all fictional. So the minute you stop and ask yourself, like, does this really make sense? All social engineering falls apart. It just falls on the ground and there's nothing we can do. So that's one thing. The second thing, I think somebody touched upon it, is don't blame the victim. Right? Somebody said that, please don't blame the victim, which is a common strategy that used to be the case. It's no longer the case anymore. One of the things that I do, suggest companies build 911 teams, very similar to what you would consider corporate or to public 911 teams. Get somebody from facilities, somebody from InfoSec, somebody from operations, somebody from executive management, and let people let them push the button. Literally let them push the button, right? And then show up. Somebody who's there who can handle anything, right? We have a team, we're here. What do we need to do? Well, I clicked on this email and now bad things are happening. Well, okay, let's take care of that, right? That seems to be fairly effective. Understanding authoritarian lines, roles and responsibilities, clearly defined roles and responsibilities are probably the very first thing you need to do. It's the foundation that all this is based off of. If you're a help desk person, and there's one place that everybody does this well, and it's rebates or rewards, right? You go up to somebody and you say, hey, can you give me a rebate? And their first answer is, I will need to get you a manager, right? If you have that level of roles and responsibilities built into the rest of your systems, then that will actually be very effective technique. Wait, she had a question, yeah? A two-parter. Yes.
One most people consider really high context, very long, Google Plus, messages are very detailed, Facebook very short, there's a noise ratio effect to you when you're actually looking at between the two networks. There are certain networks that have more quality in it. Instead of Facebook, I took a dump and
So the question was, out of the social networks that you engage in, are any of them more high quality than other ones? And that's a difficult question to answer because it really depends on what you're looking for. If I'm looking for hobbies and behaviors and language text of how an individual operates outside of work, I go to Facebook, not Google+, right? And Facebook tells me a lot more. If I'm wanting to figure out how people interact at a short session, I'll go to Twitter, right? Because if I just want to know, like, let's say I want to do an exchange with you that doesn't last more than 5 minutes because I'm worried that if I spend more than 5 minutes, somebody's going to figure out what I'm doing. I'll go to Twitter to figure out what keywords you respond to. I don't spend a lot of time on Google Plus unless I'm doing Google. Because last time I checked on it, it may be different now, but Google Plus was a lot of Google people and like their friends. And they hadn't reached beyond that yet. It may have gotten more popular now that people are pissed off at Facebook for changing their ecosystem again, I don't know. Two-parter, yes.
the second part you mentioned, or you had asked the audience, how many parts do you think there are to, you mentioned fight or flight,
nervous system.
Like this,
Yeah.
were you actually playing a little clue on everybody, or were you trying to force people to think three?
Oh, you're not supposed to catch crap like that. Very good call, though. Yes, that is known as a subtextual inference. And I went, how many people think, how many people, how many nervous systems do you think you have? And I just literally threw 3. It's used by a lot of people, but yes, it literally was to see how many people would respond with 3, right? And there's a difference between somebody who thinks about it and responds with 3 and somebody who just goes like that, right? The psychological principle behind that is something known as priming. For anybody who wonders, where you give somebody, the classic version of priming is you give somebody a list of words, 10 words, right? And then an hour. And then an hour later you go, now I need a word that begins with TA. And on that list was table. And your brain is going to do the least amount of work it has to answer the question. And so it's going to go to the shortest term memory you have, and that's table. And you can almost guarantee that 80% of the time, somebody's going to say table if that's the way you've primed them. So, good catch. I'm now paranoid about her. Okay, yes?
Will you hypnotize somebody?
Would I hypnotize somebody in here? Will I? I could. I mean, I don't know why I would. I'll say after this is over and people are moving towards food, then I will do it. I don't, my talk's not about that, and I don't want to confuse anybody and it's like, well, we had a hypnotist show at GrrCON. It's not really what I'm going for. But yeah, stick around and we'll talk it out. Yeah.
What words would you look for to indicate clear the first line of defense? Like if you're calling into a call center and you're talking to them, you realize what words would you is good look for? Okay, can I talk to your manager? Kind of just go up the chain of command.
So the question was, what kind of keywords do I look for that indicate to me that I need to move beyond the first level of support or whatever it is to the next level because I'm not getting what I want? I don't actually look for keywords. I look for process. People who are first-line defenders, they're either one of 2 people. People who know what they're doing or people who are following a script. That's it. You almost never get any of the other. Every once in a while you get a third one, but I almost never do, so I always focus on one of the 2. And the easiest way to determine whether or not you're getting a script, and almost everybody here knows what the script is, I'm sure, but the easiest way to determine whether or not you've got a script is to ask an out-of-bound question. A completely out-of-bound, right? Like, okay, have you turned off the router? Yeah, okay, I turned off the router, but I have a question for you. Do you know what the software NVRAM of this is? Because I think I'm running 2028, and I think I should be running 2026. Okay, have you turned the router back on? Yeah, can I talk to your supervisor? Thanks. It's actually a lot of fun. If you want to play with social engineering and you've never done it before, easiest place in the world to do it, help desk. 1, they can't get too pissed off at you, and 2, they're very scripted, yes. Fair enough. So yeah, it's a complicated question. So first, I would just like to point out that the question is from somebody who actually didn't sit through the talk, which I find fascinating. Like, that's awesome. Like, I'm just going to ask a question. That's cool. You should reward that, man. That's how you learn. The question was, so let's say you're on the phone. This is not normally what I use such social engineering for, but it does work. You're on the phone with the help desk, and you're having a problem, and you want to escalate, but they won't let you escalate because, well, they're trained not to, right? We all know that they're trained not to. There are a couple things that you can do. First of all, realize that you have no power, right? That person's escalation process is their decision, and you have to give them a reason to escalate because otherwise they will get fired. That's how they think of it, right? You don't have to think about how you think of it, like I just want to get my crap fixed. You have to think about it like this dude's got a job. It's not the greatest job in the world because he's obviously answering my phone call. And he's got and he's very limited in what he can do, right? It's what he's doing. But yeah. Yeah, no worries. well, there's some things you can do there. The issue here is that you need to find the trigger point that's going to cause that person to refer you out. That's what you need to do, right? You need to find out what that person needs so that he can. And then one of the things that I do, and this happens all the time, is what will make this so bad you can't fix it? I ask that question. I literally do. Like, what will make this so bad that you can't fix it? If it has this light on, it has that light on. Well, why didn't you say that at the beginning? I didn't know that light was important until you told me. Right? There's that. The other thing to do is that's a case where you have to build rapport, and you have to give that person a reason to help you, and you have to explain it, and like, you know, just relate to them. Be like, okay, so I have to do this. Be like, you dude, I know you have to run through this script, right? I know you do, man. That's cool. How much more of this script is there? How much more time do I need to do this before we can move on? And sometimes you get the, I don't know, sir. Will you please turn on the modem? And that, you know, sometimes you're stuck, right? But sometimes you get the, look, man, I know, right? I know this sucks, and I know you probably know what you're doing, but just let me run through my checklist, and then I can do what I need to do for you. You'd be like, okay, all right, so how much longer is this checklist? Well, it's like another 20 minutes. All right, dude, that's not cool, right? I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on the phone with you going through this checklist. Can I talk to somebody about that? And then it's not about him, right? And you're not taking away his prowess, right? You're talking about the system he has to run in. And at that point, he can escalate all day long, right? Like, manager, this guy hates our process. Right? He's not going, manager, this guy hates me. I'm doing a bad job. I can't solve his problem, right? You're actually saying, I'm taking too long. So he wants better support. Just here's a quick tip for anybody, since we happen to be on the how do you get help out of people quickly. Never ever use the word lawyer. Ever. You will suddenly find yourself in a quagmire of getting nothing done for the rest of your natural existence. Like, it's like, well, I'll get the lawyers. Well, okay. Now we're going to do everything by the book, excruciatingly. But anyway, so any other questions? I know we're running out of time. I'm getting to know we're out of time, so I'll be over here for a couple more minutes for anybody who wants to walk up and have questions with me. Otherwise, thank you. Hope you guys have a wonderful dinner.